Maybe you've seen the pictures, but if you haven't, Cristiano Ronaldo has recently been spotted wearing blacked out boots in a practice that look to be the next generation Superfly, the Superfly 6, or at the very least, the next generation of top-end Mercurial, which is really exciting because it means that we are going to be getting a next generation Mercurial sooner rather than later. And equally as exciting, that also means that we're probably going to get the Joma Champion Max 2. What's going on, guys? Josh from soccerreviewsforyou.com bringing you a video today to break down and more or less speculate on what Cristiano Ronaldo was seen wearing in a practice very recently, what looked to be a blacked out variation of the next generation Mercurial, possibly the next Superfly, the Superfly 6. The pictures that we have are relatively clear, so you can see a good amount of what's going on. And a lot of you guys have been asking me about this, so I want to make a video talking about what I think is happening. So if you're interested in that information, please stick around. And if you guys enjoy these boot spotting style videos, don't forget to support this one with a like. It's always difficult to try and judge a product based on a couple different pictures, and by no means is this a review of the upcoming Mercurial. But with these pictures, given that we do have a few different angles, most of which are relatively clear in terms of what you can see on the outside, there are three main things that we can kind of break down in this particular video: the collar, the upper, as well as the sole plate and stud pattern, which we're going to lump together. Starting off with the sole plate and stud pattern, which is the blurriest view we have of this shoe, because there is a picture of the bottom of his cleats, but it has to be zoomed in quite a bit, which makes the image kind of pixelated, so it's not super clear. But you can pretty much make out the fact that the stud pattern looks to be exactly the same layout and the exact same shape studs as what we have from the current generation firm ground stud pattern in the Mercurial line. And you know right away that this is a prototype boot that Ronaldo is testing, because he pretty much never wears the firm ground shoes. He's always wearing a soft ground pro variation. Anyways, the stud pattern is the same, which doesn't mean all that much because this is still in the prototype or development phase, and we have seen Nike make changes from the development boots to the final product in regards to the stud pattern. It wouldn't surprise me if we got the same stud pattern again, given that this is the first time we're getting it in this current generation of Mercurials. It was all new for Vapor 11 and Superfly 5, and it's still very good. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I would not be upset with Nike if they didn't change anything, but again, it is definitely possible that something could change from what we're seeing right now in these pictures. As far as the sole plate is concerned, that's very difficult to make out. But again, similar to the stud pattern, I would expect something very similar to the Nike plate we currently have on the Vapor 11 and the Superfly 5. In my opinion, I really think that that particular technology, the idea of an anatomically shaped sole plate, the special manufacturing process where it's only one single layer of material, which decreases the weight of the product as well, is probably the best new innovation of 2017. It really does change the feel and performance characteristics of the shoe. I think it's very well suited for the Mercurial line, and I feel like that is a technology, or at least an idea, that will stay consistent with every future Mercurial product. I think it just really works well, and it's a great idea from Nike. So I would expect something very similar in that department in the next generation of Mercurial as well. Next, we have the upper, which in my opinion is the most interesting part of these blackout boots, because it doesn't look like what I was expecting for a next generation Mercurial model. Now you can see the laces run down the middle, typical Mercurial. In the middle of the laces, you have elasticated flyknit, which flows into the collar, which also appears to be elasticated flyknit, kind of unchanged from all the current mid-cut models from Nike. The same thing as when it was first introduced as a concept with the Superfly 4 and the Obra 1. The rest of the upper, however, does not have any texturing to it at all. It appears to be completely smooth, which is interesting because we've never seen that from Nike in the form of a flyknit upper. If you think back to every single one they've done, the Superfly 4 probably had the smoothest flyknit upper we've ever seen, but it also had the bump outs from the actual flyknit material or Brio cables on that particular shoe, which acted obviously as part of the lacing system and security of the shoe. Then obviously with the Superfly 5, what we have right now, the speed rib texturing is really the main element of that Flyknit upper. We had texture with the Obra 1, and obviously texture plays a huge role in the Obra 2. And then of course with the Phantom 3, the other all Flyknit shoe that we have, again, texture and design within that Flyknit material is a big part of what that shoe is all about. So the fact that this is completely smooth, dare I say, it almost looks like a leather material, which I'll say this right now, I really don't think the next generation Mercurial is going to launch as a leather boot. It's possible we might get some kind of TechCraft model down the line, but I don't think that the main versions of this shoe is going to be leather by any means. It's possible that this is some kind of Atasian synthetic, maybe even some kind of new synthetic that we don't know about at this point, but at the same time, I would still be very surprised if the main base of the upper on whatever shoe that Ronaldo is wearing in this picture is not some kind of a Flyknit material, at least some kind of a Flyknit base with maybe some kind of top layer that isn't Nike skin, something different that we don't know about. It's really difficult to say, again, based on the pictures, but it definitely looks interesting, and I'm very curious to see what this is going to end up being. The last thing to talk about here is the fact that the boots Ronaldo is wearing in these pictures is mid-cut, which essentially confirms that the next generation of Mercurial, possibly the most expensive model in the line, I would actually say that's likely, is going to be a mid-cut shoe, which shouldn't be too surprising because it's something that's done very well for Nike. They essentially started it with the Superfly 4 and the Obra 1 back in 2014, and it's caught on as a major trend in modern soccer cleats in general. So the fact that they are going to have that as an option in the next Mercurial, not surprising whatsoever. Does this mean that if this shoe he's wearing does end up being the Superfly 6, that it will only be available as a mid, kind of like what we've had with the Superfly 4 and currently with the 5? Not necessarily. I wouldn't be surprised if we got something like what we have right now with the Hypervenom Phantom 3, where there's a mid-cut DF model and a low-cut model, which is essentially the exact same shoe, mid and low, just a slightly lower price for the low cut variation, and it gives you the option to choose between a mid and a low, which more options is always better. Doesn't necessarily mean we're gonna get it though. The other thing that's worth talking about here is the fact that Ronaldo is wearing these, and he obviously has not worn the retail version of any mid-cut Superfly since it was reintroduced in the form of the Superfly 4. He had an altered version of that, and he obviously currently wears an altered version of the Superfly 5, where the collar is about a quarter or to half the length of the usual collar. It's completely different. Essentially a low-cut Superfly, basically, is the way you could sum it up. So it's definitely possible, and I would think also pretty likely that once the shoe does come out as the regular version that you can actually buy, Ronaldo will probably have his own custom variation of the shoe once again. So don't worry, that's definitely in the works already. I'm sure he already told them what he wants in his next custom version of whatever he was just wearing in a practice here. The other thing in regards to how the collar actually looks, it appears to be very similar to what we've had with every single mid-cut collar from Nike. Basically, it's a Flyknit material. It looks to be elasticated. I don't see why it would be anything different. The shape and general height seems to be pretty much the same as well. It just has this little kind of raised piece at the front that immediately when I saw it reminded me of this. This is a Nike Mercurial Vapor 3 as an example, and you can see this little extension piece right here. That's actually a little fold over flap tongue that you would never actually see folded over because it's so small and it really just doesn't stay down. But it's something that was originally introduced on the Vapor 1. It was featured on the 2 as well as the Vapor 3, but that was the last one to have it. So I kind of like it just for the sake of it kind of having a little bit of a tie-in to some older Mercurial models, which I think is kind of cool. And I just like having a little bit of shape to the collar rather than it being completely cut flat at the top, as we've had with the Superfly 4 and the Superfly 5. So I don't think that's too surprising. If you guys remember watching Drugba over the years, he always had this little extension piece added to his Mercurials, every single one that he wore after the Vapor 3, which obviously that was the last one to have it. I always thought that was a cool little detail, and I like the fact that they added something like that in the form of whatever this shoe Ronaldo is wearing, possibly the Superfly 6. It's a next generation Mercurial. That's really all we know at this point. Now, for those of you guys that regularly watch the channel, you may have seen a fairly recent video of mine where I talked about Nike killing the Superfly line, the Superfly 5 being the last one and there not being a Superfly 6. If you haven't seen that video, I'll leave a little pop-up on screen because there definitely is some interesting information and some theories of mine. And also, if you guys enjoy the intros on the channel, which I know a lot of you do, that one has a pretty killer intro. And if you've seen that video, you'll understand that joke. But anyways, basically I said that there probably wouldn't be a Superfly 6. These pictures kind of suggest otherwise, mainly on the fact that they are mid-cut. And the only reason why I said that we might not be getting a Superfly 6 is because of the release of the Nike Mercurial Vapor Flyknit Ultra, which I have right here as an example. And really the thing about this particular shoe that led me to believe that we wouldn't be seeing another Superfly is the name. It's the Nike Mercurial Vapor Flyknit Ultra, when essentially it's more Superfly than it is Vapor, I would say, but it does have a little bit of the two. The main thing about this that makes it more Superfly is the fact that this is a full Flyknit upper. It maintains a speed rib texturing, and really what we thought this was, or what I think this is, I still think it's the case, but this is kind of a look at the future of Mercurials, what we can kind of expect from the next generation of Mercurial boots, which is what we're seeing Ronaldo wear in this picture. Now, what's kind of contradicting with what we think we know with this shoe, or what we think Nike released in terms of information with this shoe and what we're seeing in these pictures, is a couple different things. One, the fact that he's not wearing a low-cut boot, which I kind of anticipated the next Mercurial being a low-cut shoe, just for the simple fact that when you're talking about the Mercurial line, what it stands for, really outright speed, responsiveness, grip, super lightweight construction, it makes more sense for the shoe to be low rather than mid. If you add a collar to something like this, if you add a collar to really any shoe, that collar has some kind of weight to it, so it makes the shoe heavier without really having any kind of performance benefit. But obviously Nike is thinking that the collar is way too popular to get rid of, so they're sticking with it, which I'm not too surprised about. But again, kind of circling back to the upper, this is something that features a Flyknit upper, but still maintains the texturing, where the upper on this shoe that we're seeing Ronaldo wear appears to be completely smooth, which again, it doesn't look like Flyknit, so I'm really curious to see what that's gonna end up being. We kind of thought that the Flyknit Ultra was a look at the future of what the next generation of Mercurial is going to be, but based on these pictures, I think a lot of that is all up in the air. Again, I think we can kind of more or less expect something very similar in regards to the sole plate and stud pattern. We obviously know that we are gonna get a mid-cut, and I would anticipate something in a low-cut variation as well, but the upper really is the mystery here, and that's, to me, probably the biggest part of the shoe in terms of how it's going to feel. That's been the signature of every single top-end Mercurial model, be it a Superfly or a Vapor. So I think what we see Ronaldo wearing is going to be whatever the replacement is for the Superfly, but will we also get a Vapor? That's something that I really don't know. I think, and this is just my opinion, it's very likely that they might even kill the Vapor and keep the Superfly, or call it a Vapor and get rid of the Superfly name. But I think we're only gonna get one variation of a shoe in the form of a mid and in the form of a low, like what we have right now in the form of the Phantom 3 Low and the Phantom 3 DF. So what we have right now in the form of the Vapor 11, which is its own product, and the Superfly 5, which is its own unique product with two completely different uppers that offer two very different experiences. I think that Nike might try to actually have less models, but just offer variation in regards to cut, rather than having more models and more names. It's just a theory, but that's kind of what I think is happening. Again, it's still very early on, so it's really difficult to say. So if we know for sure a new generation of Mercurials is coming, when is it going to release? Is it going to be very soon? Is it far in the future? I personally think, and to me this is the most likely scenario here, is it's going to release sometime around the start of the 2018 World Cup. Likely 1 month before will be the unveil, and then right around the start of the tournament is when the shoes will actually be available at pretty much every single retailer. Pretty much the same way that they ended up launching the Nike Magista Obra 1 and the Nike Mercurial Superfly 4. Usually these big brands, you're gonna see big releases from pretty much every brand come World Cup time, just because it is so much attention on the tournament. There's so much attention on the footwear. It's just a really good marketing platform to launch a brand new product. So again, I would expect a new release of new generation Mercurials to be right around the 2018 World Cup. So essentially next summer, basically. So if you were interested in buying a Superfly 5, but you're worried about the Superfly 6 coming out next week, don't worry, I don't think it's coming out next week. I think you still have quite a bit of time until we get something new from Nike in regards to the Mercurial line. I also wanted to mention that I'm sure Nike is very relieved now that Portugal has officially qualified for the World Cup. Not that I thought that they wouldn't, but could you imagine the marketing disaster and headache for Nike if Cristiano Ronaldo was not participating in the tournament, when I think they're going to launch a brand new shoe. He is the main face of the Mercurial line, and I know Neymar is part of the Mercurial marketing as well now, and he of course is in the tournament with Brazil, but Ronaldo, the Superfly, it's just something that he has to be a part of. So if he wasn't in the World Cup, that would be a major issue for Nike. And obviously the saga continues with Messi at this point, and hopefully him getting in the tournament as well. Obviously everybody wants to see Argentina in the tournament, but if they don't end up making it and Messi doesn't end up playing in this World Cup, that's a big blow for Adidas's marketing team, because I'm sure they're going to be looking to launch something brand new at that particular time as well. But that's pretty much it for me, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Those are my thoughts. If you have any thoughts of your own or any questions in regards to what I talked about in this video, leave it down below in the comments and I'll do my best to get an answer out to you as soon as I possibly can. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to support it with a like. Subscribe if you haven't already for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. All my social media information is linked in the description as well. And other than that, guys, hope you enjoyed today's video. And as always, thanks for watching.